Hello, here we go. Let's do this. We got homework 13, and every problem we just kind of attack it like we're not sure which chapter it's in. So as I look at this, it looks like two lines are intersecting, which means they meet in a point. And I also notice that four angles are created. There's an acute angle and an obtuse angle, meaning bigger than 90. Okay. So one thing I noticed is that I really don't have to think about these two angles. So I could also kind of scratch that off and just focus on what's happening at this part of the picture. And I'm hoping that you would notice that together this makes a straight line. So this angle measurement is 180 degrees. And so I know there's a couple ways to do this problem, but if I know if that's 62, then I can actually do a little math to figure out what this would have to be. So if the whole thing is 180, if I subtract 62 from that, that would be 7, okay, 118. And if this is on the no calculator part of the test, you would want to just double check that. So I'm going to actually add, oops, hold on one second, I lost my light. Okay, sorry about that. So I'm just going to add these two just to make sure I didn't make a mistake. Okay, 6, 7, 8. Okay, 180. So I know that this angle, the obtuse angle, is 118. So one way to do it, but they didn't put that way. One way we'd do it is I know that 4x minus 10 would have to equal 118. But that's not actually what they're looking for. So they're saying, what would be one equation that you could use? And I'm noticing that if this is the first angle, and I guess I could call this angle A, or actually it'd probably be better to just call it angle 1. Angle 1 plus the angle 2 would have to equal 180. And this has been copied a bunch of times, but that is a plus sign. So this one doesn't work because if I took this angle and subtracted the 62, that's not what I got. So see how these two angles, angle 1 and 2, would add up to 180. And then to solve for it, which is exactly what I did, I subtracted this 62, or I subtracted angle 2 on both sides. That's exactly what I did. Is that making sense? So here is my answer. Okay, and this also makes sense. We know that 4x minus 10 has to be 118. And we know if we added it to 62, it would equal 180. We know that if we took this, we know that this expression has to be 118. If you subtract 62, you don't get 180. So that's the reason why this one doesn't work. And then this one is, if I saw a 90-degree angle, well, 90 doesn't make sense here, right? I don't see any 90-degree angles. And we know that these two angles are not equal to each other, right? This angle is big and this one's small, so that wouldn't be equal at all. Okay, next question. So kind of like the last question, we know that when two lines meet, unless they meet at a 90, we have two obtuse angles that are equal. And we can think of that as vertical angles. And we also have two acute angles that are equal. And we know that any of the obtuse and the acute, so if, again, we think about this, just the obtuse and acute should add up to 180, and the obtuse and acute should add up to 180. So as we look at that, we could really do, I kind of want to pick the two that just have one variable x. I think that makes sense. If I do this one first, then I have two variables. I'd kind of like to figure out what x is first before I then go to y. Okay. So just kind of looking at it this way, I know those two expressions should add up to 180 because they make a straight line. That's a linear pair. So 12x plus 3 plus 8x plus 7. We know those two angles should add up to 180 because that's the linear pair postulate. So as we combine these terms, we get 20x is equal to 170. So if I divide 170 by 20, I get 8.5. Okay. So x is 8.5. Now that I know that x is 8.5, I can plug it back in just to double check, or I can just keep going in the problem. But I'm going to plug it back in because anytime I get a decimal, I'm a little unsure, but let's just double check. So if I have 12 times 8.5 plus 3, I need to add that, right? 12 times 8.5 plus 3 should equal 8 times 8.5 plus 7. And this needs to equal 180. So let's just double check this. So I get 102 plus 3. And 68 plus 7 all equals 180. So it looks like this would be 105 and this would be 75, and yay. Okay, so that we're sure that that is x, but they actually want to know y. So now there's a couple ways we can do this. We know the measurement of this obtuse angle is 105, and we know that this expression has to equal 105. So that's one way we could do it. The other way is we could set these equal to 180, but I already know this is equal, so I'm just going to do it that way. So 105 should be equal to the expression 14y minus 7. So I'm going to add 7 on both sides. I get 112, and then I get 112 divided by 14 is y. Now, I don't have a calculator, so I'm just going to leave it like that. I'm thinking that might be a decimal. I'm not sure. Both are even. I guess I could divide by 2. Right, so that would be 56 divided by 7. Yeah, 56 divided by 7. Well, 56, 7 times 8. Oh, so that's 8. Okay, so if you had a calculator, you would have found out that that divided by that is 8. Let me just double check. 14 times 8 is 32. Yep, 112. Perfect. So y is 8. Now let's go to the next one. These are called corresponding angles. They correspond. So what that means is they're supposed to be equal. And visually this makes sense as well. If we think about this, sliding should fit perfectly into there. So I'm going to set them equal to each other. 5, 2d minus 3 should equal 6d plus 11 plus 2d. So that'd be 10d with distribution, minus 15. So these would combine to give us 8d. This would subtract, give me 2d. And so d I get is 13. Now, it's close to the test, so I should plug this back in just to be sure. 2 times 13 is 26. Take away 3 is 23. And so my answer is 5 times 23. And that'd be 115. I got to make sure this is 115. So 6 times 13 plus 11 plus 2 times 13. $115. Perfect. So we definitely got that right. D is 13. Cool. Now here we got a little bit of a triangle congruence theorem. We know this length is equal because they're touching. That's reflexive. This is equal. So these two are equal because of leg-leg triangle congruence, right triangle congruence. We could also say side, angle, side, side, angle, side. So we could also say because of side, angle, side congruence. Okay, so because that's true, that's 48 and this would be 48. This side should equal this side. The two hypotenuses should be equal. So 5x minus 12 should be equal to 3x plus 30. So this would be 2x. Subtract 3x on both sides, add 12 on both sides, I get 42. So x is 21, and that is one of my answer choices. To be sure, you should plug it back in. So 21 times 5 would be 105 minus 12, 93. 21 times 3, 63 plus 30. Did I do that wrong? Yeah. Oh no, that's right, 93. Okay, looking good. Let's keep going. Cool. So I have all the way around is 360, but I also know that just a straight line, so you can actually have three angles that together make a straight line, and that's okay too. It's just not going to be called a linear pair. You don't wear three